morning, everybody. Several weeks ago, Maggie, she and I were doing a walk, and she said, you need to do a sermon sometime on disabilities because of the life that you've had with John and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, right. We'll do that sometime. And a few days later, Tim called me and told me that he and Maggie and Marcy were all going to be in Arizona this Sunday, so would I do a sermon? And it happens to be Laity Sunday in the Methodist Church, which means that, and I think maybe you've noticed, all the people leading the service today are lay people in our church, which is a special thing and not something that we do real often here. So all the planets aligned, and here I am to preach to you all. But really what I'm going to do is tell you a story. We all have a story to tell, and this story is a part of our story. And the scripture I chose today, so this is where the mistake is from Mark, chapter 2, verses 1 through 5. Please stand as you are able in body or spirit as we listen to the gospel. A few days later, when Jesus again entered Capernaum, the people heard that he had come home. So many gathered that there was no room left, not even outside the door, and he preached the word to them. Some men came, bringing to him a paralytic, carried by 4 of them. Since they could not get him to Jesus because of the crowd, they made an opening in the roof above Jesus, and after digging through it, lowered the mat the paralyzed man was lying on. When Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralytic, "Son, your sins are forgiven." May we all hear what the Spirit is saying to the people. Amen. You may be seated. So I am not anywhere close to a biblical scholar, but if you Google this story, and it's in 3 of the Gospels, there's lots of discussion about Jesus forgiving the sins, healing the man, and the Pharisees' reaction to that. But what really speaks to me in this story is the 4 men. They saw a friend in need, someone who had a disability and wanted to get close to Jesus. The crowd was huge, and there was no way for the paralyzed man to get to Jesus. The 4 men found a way to make it happen, and did it respectfully, even though they had to cut a hole in the roof. For 25 years now, our family has experienced many people like these 4 men as we've raised our son with disabilities into adulthood. They say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, we've been blessed with way more than a village. One day when I was at our church in Denver, we went to Trinity United Methodist Church, which is across from the Brown Palace, so a really large downtown church. The head of the children's program stopped me and asked why John wasn't in Sunday school. And I explained that he really needed someone with him because he could not stay still. And I didn't want to burden the volunteer teachers in the Sunday school classes. And Kathy looked at me and very pointedly said, well, if John isn't welcome here, where would he be welcome? She found a volunteer that would go to Sunday school with John, and for many years he enjoyed Sunday school, VBS, and even the 4th and 5th grade retreats to Divide, Colorado. Our move to Steamboat was planned long before Tom and I knew what our family would look like. When we were dating, we were up here staying at Alice and George Lund's B&B, and decided this is where we wanted to retire, was to the mountains. After John finished 5th grade in Boulder, we made the move, and we've never looked back. And the other day I was practicing, and John was here, and he goes, "What do you mean, Mom, by we never looked back?" And I said, well, things were good here, and we didn't have to go back to Boulder. We stayed here and made our life here. And Steamboat has been full of many, many examples of 4 men helping a friend. As you all know, there are many great organizations here that provide services for people with disabilities, like Horizons and STARS and True North. And John was blessed to have a welcoming peer group when he was in the middle and high school here, and he remains to this day close to many of them. He has a job at the food bank, which he loves, and they tell me they love him. and he participates with True North. John has also found many ways to use his passion of speaking to microphones. He starts our 10:15 service. He's the MC at Open Mic Night, at Corner Slice, and he's done many other events. So along the way, we've met many people who could be one of the four men. But today, what I really want to focus on are the lessons that we have learned from John. Through the years, I've listened to lots of sermons from many different ministers, and a common theme seems to be a 3-point sermon. So, of course, I have 3 lessons that we have learned from John. So you can count them off if you want. The first lesson is to let it go. And this is very similar to Tim's discussion last week about let it be. But letting it go is really a little different, if you think about it, than letting it be. And as I approached motherhood, I had a picture of what our life would be like based on my friends and our family's experiences. I pictured attending reading groups at the library, participating in group swims at the swim lessons at the pool, and many more activities. Because of John's fragile health in the beginning, I had to let those pictures go. It would not be safe for him to be around other children and catch every cold on the planet, having spent 4 months in the hospital at birth. So I had to find a new experience for our family. But I do have to say, one of the benefits of staying home and keeping him isolated was the hours of cuddling in the rocking chair. I also have a nephew who's 3 months older than John, who's the youngest of 3 children. And for a long time, I tried to compare John's milestones to Eric's. I quickly found this to be pretty destructive, as their experiences were so different for many, many reasons. Again, I had to let go of what I thought John's development should be and embrace his milestones in his time. And he took his time. John, when he was small, you could put him in the middle of the floor in the family room, and he would stand up and had perfect balance, but he wouldn't go anywhere. He would not walk. And we worked with an organization in Denver called the Anchor Center, so another one of those 4 men, that provides services to blind children and young children with visual impairment. And one of the counselors had come to our house, and she said, well, he's not walking because he can't see clearly where he's going. And it scares him to take that step. But when he finally took that step, he was running. He never stopped. And in fact, he did track all through middle school and high school and cross-country running. But the interesting thing, because he's blind in one eye, John doesn't have depth perception. So fortunately, the stairs here are different colors, so he can see that. But if they're not, he would just step off and not see that. And this was a young man who didn't talk until he was 3 years old. And those of you who know him today probably think that's really an interesting thing, because again, once he started talking, he never stopped. But that made for some really interesting times, because he understood perfectly what was going on. In fact, when he was like 4 and a half, he had a speech therapist that he would tell her things that happened before he was talking, which just amazed her, because she said memory is language-based. So he had the language, he just wasn't using it. But we had a lot of temper tantrums in that time, because trying to communicate with somebody who won't talk is a very interesting thing. When he started school, we quickly came to the realization that what we really wanted from him was for him to do his best and learn what he could from his classes. This relieved a lot of stress and angst over grades. We didn't care if he was the straight A student. He just needed to do his best, whatever that was. We did expect him to do his schoolwork and participate and be respectful in the classroom. Over the years, I was often amazed at what he absorbed from class, as was evidenced when he had the discussion with his eye doctor about his retina. And this was soon after he'd completed a study of the eye in his biology class. I really wanted his biology teacher to be there to see what he knew. We also learned that we had to let John be who he is and listen to him and his wishes, and not try to control everything or impose our desires on him. Life is much, much easier when we remember this. And I think this is probably true of any kid. not just John. The second lesson that we've learned from John is to live in the moment. And John is an expert at this. One of my favorite examples of this is, I don't know if you guys remember the shoe store that was in the Franklin Mall. Debbie was the person who ran the shoe store, and she had this huge dog named Bosco. And John has never met an animal he doesn't love. And so we'd always, when we visited Steamboat before we moved here, and even after we moved here, we'd go from store to store with dogs. And so we're in Debbie's store, and John is loving on Bosco, and he's like, oh, this is my favorite store in Steamboat, Mom. Okay, so then we go on down the street, and we end up at Callie's at like 5th and Lincoln or whatever. And the owner there had poodles, I think. And John is in there under the hanging dresses and stuff, loving on the poodles, and going, this is my favorite store in Steamboat. And Debbie happened to be in there. She had an errand to run, and she had to do something, and she's like, what? I thought my store was your favorite store. And I said, Debbie, what you don't understand is this is where John is right now. And so this is his favorite store. And that's the way he lives his life. This summer, I remember when we were driving home from church one day, that day when people gave their gratitude, somebody, probably Kurt Merchant, yelled out there were 100 and some days left till ski season. And as we're driving home, John looks at me and he goes, why can't that person just enjoy the summer day that we have today and live in the moment now? So, you know, it's not just him. And it seems like whatever we're doing at the time is the best time we've done it, even if it's the 20th time we've done it. We just came back from Cody, and we spent a couple days in Yellowstone. Mom, this is the best trip to Yellowstone. He and I had been there in June with my mother, you know, so, and growing up with grandparents who live in Cody, he's probably been there 20 times in his short life. And traveling with John is always interesting as he delights in the simplest things that are happening in that moment. So I got to have one of those live in the moment experiences with him. We'd moved up here and we were back in Denver and we were riding light rail. John likes the trains and he wanted to ride all the light rail lines, which takes about 4 or 5 hours out of your day. And we're on the light rail line that goes along I-25. And I remember when they were building that, and construction was, well, I won't use that word here, but anyway, it was terrible. And they were putting up the big walls, the sound barrier walls. So we're riding along in the light rail, and I'm looking at those walls, and lo and behold, there's beautiful sculptures on those walls. And if you've driven I-25, you're not looking at those walls. You're looking at all the traffic on I-25. So because of John's love of riding the rails, I got to have a live-in-the-moment experience and see something that I'd never seen. And so because of John, we've learned to embrace and celebrate the milestones when they happen. Not wait for the next one to happen, but celebrate the one that you're in. And the third lesson that we've learned from John is the practice of unconditional love. Several years ago, my mother was in a Bible study, and the leader of the Bible study asked the people in it if they knew somebody who lived unconditional love. And my mother immediately said, yes, I have a grandson who believes in unconditional love and expresses unconditional love. And when I asked John, what does unconditional love mean to you? He said, well, it means that we should love everybody because nobody's different. We're all the same, which is what Jesus has taught all of us. And John really lives that. He doesn't care the color of their skin. He doesn't care if the friend is taller than him or faster than him. He doesn't care what their sexual orientation is. In John's world, there is no gray. It's black and white, and you are what you are. And he loves you no matter what. I've never heard him talk bad about another person. And again, John also has an unconditional love of animals, as you can see in the picture with our Boris and Natasha up there. If you want to see unconditional love in action, I suggest you come down here on a Friday afternoon when the True North group is cooking in the kitchen. This group supports each other, has no judgment. It's so much fun to watch them help each other. They all have unconditional love. And you can see that there or if they're hiking on Spring Creek, or if they're bowling, and Ellie, who is blind, one of her friends gets her up there and helps her put the ball on the ramp thing that goes down. So just no judgment, and expressing that love for each other is such a wonderful thing. So these are the lessons that John has blessed our lives with. In addition, as I said, we've been blessed by the many people who resemble the 4 men that lowered their friend to Jesus to be healed. So in a minute, the choir is going to sing an anthem, and I wanted to give you a little background on that anthem before you hear it. On Saturday, February 13th, John was born at 24 weeks gestation, and his twin sister Natasha was stillborn. At the time, the neonatologist told us John had a 50% chance of living. A few days after John's birth, my girlfriend brought me the cassette tape from the service at our church that Sunday. And about 4 weeks later, I was finally ready to listen to that service. So I sat in my parents' motorhome, which we lived in the parking lot of the hospital in Denver, because we lived in Boulder and we wanted to be close to him. And I listened to the church service, and the choir sang that Sunday the song, "He Never Failed Me Yet." And I'm sitting there with the tears going down my face, listening to this song, and was reminded of a very valuable lesson, that the Lord is always with us and will help strengthen us no matter what.